You all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Nice to see you all here. Thanks for being here. We're doing a little work down on that way of the building, and I told them we have meditation from 11 to 12, so they should be extra loud between 11 and 12. I let them know that you're all pretty experienced and advanced meditation practitioners, so all the noise you could handle. So I'm not too worried about it. Looking around, I feel very confident with this room full of people that the drilling won't bother you. And I said we usually start the meditation around 10 after 11, and that's when I told them to do like 20 minutes of just straight drilling. On this side of the building, preferably, actually right below where you're sitting, Kathy. So if we lose Kathy during the meditation, yeah, there's a secret drop box right there. So, there is actually, I started talking last week, I think already? Yeah, because of the 6th anniversary of us being here, and I started talking about the history of the building a little bit and us acquiring it and all that. But when we took over, one of the cool things we got was other than 6,000 square foot rad church, was a wall of keys to this whole building. A lot of them worked, a lot of them didn't work, a lot of them were like, if you notice on the doors, they have the old, I'm drawing a blank, what are they called? Yeah, there you go, skeleton keys, which I'm convinced one skeleton key will open every skeleton key door in the world. But either way, we had a bunch of those. But the coolest thing about the keys was there were labels on them. Some of them you could see, some of them you couldn't. But one of them said time capsule box. So we spent, a couple months on our own little scavenger hunts looking for a time capsule box, and came up empty. So if you're ever bored and you want to go hunting for a time capsule box, don't do that, actually. Bad idea. But, so somewhere there's a time capsule box, which is kind of cool. All right, so with that, anyone here for the first time? One, hi, welcome.
Hi.
What brings you here?
Just
Time capsules?
yeah, just visiting.
Right on.
The weekend.
Oh, you're the one who called or
Yes.
emailed or both? Yeah. You're visiting, wait, hang on. I forgot your name.
Austin, Texas.
No, that's not your name. Well, Lisa?
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome Lisa from Austin. What brings you to San Diego? Family. Nice.
Just a long weekend. Beautiful weather.
Yeah. They're all here because of family too. So, well, we're glad you made it. Thanks for being here. Some of them even came together. All right, so we'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, outside, drilling, whatever it might be. This is life. See? Right on cue. And all the way from Austin for this. You could have stayed in Austin for this. Yeah. So these are not distractions. These are not disruptions. This is simply what's happening around us as we sit and breathe. If anything, the sounds will just hopefully keep you awake. So posture, you just want to be comfortable, however you're sitting. If you're on a cushion, often slide into the front third, allows your back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed, hands can be on the knees or in the lap. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important with the practice, do not expect silence. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. We'll start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice. Observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments of your practice, just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after, compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external situation. And what we realize from this practice is this is your life every single day. Things happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's what we get. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening in your lives. And all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful. Whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. This is not an escape, as often people think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment. And very often the present moment is filled with difficulties, challenges, chaos. Fortunately, here we have a nice, quiet, peaceful space to sit in this morning. So at least we got that going for us. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, and learning to be with life as it arises. And once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. When we let go of trying to control what's happening, when we learn to be with what's happening, life becomes a lot more pleasant. But it's a practice, and it's not an easy one. Day in and day out, we are faced with difficulties. Things happening that we don't agree with, that we don't like, that we want to change. And very often we can do things about it, and very often we can't. Someone said to me a while back, they said that with regards to trying to change things and worrying about things, they said, if there's something you can do about it, then why worry about it? And if there's nothing you can do about it, then why worry about it? And this has to do with what I talk about very frequently, which is surrendering the control that we're often trying to have over situations. And while, we don't clearly aspire to have drilling going on during every meditation, I love when things like this happen. Because it's really opportunities for us to just sit with what's going on. Because I'm pretty sure nobody woke up this morning and said, I'm going to the Dharma Bum Temple so I can listen to drilling for 20 minutes. You were doing that at home. And the drilling was in your own head. Right? Now, true to form, now that the meditation is done, it'll probably be perfectly silent out there for the next 20 minutes. So that's why I told them, extra loud. But this is the way life works. We just face things as they arise. And the cool thing about it, just using this example, is that, and everyone was in a different place, and I don't know, we may or may not get into that, but regardless of how you felt about that noise, from the spectrum of this is the worst thing in the world and this is torture, to it's keeping me awake, it's not the worst thing in the world, right? Whatever your thoughts on whatever spectrum there is about that whole situation, nobody came here thinking, that's because I didn't tell you in advance, that was going to be going on. And most people were probably not hoping for that, right? Was anyone on their way here thinking, other than Joe maybe, thinking, I hope there's a lot of drilling going on? Right? We didn't look for that. We weren't seeking it. We weren't craving that. We weren't desiring it. It, in fact, was really what we didn't want. But here's the beauty of it. Unless someone snuck out very quietly, which is always possible, we all just sat for 20 minutes with something we really didn't want. Congratulations. Because most people can't sit for more than 20 seconds with something they don't want. We are conditioned in our way of being to instantly change everything. You know, and for old folks and older, like myself, it was a lot harder to change things kind of pre-technology days. Now everything we can just change instantly. Literally, the push of a button, we change everything in our lives. We are not conditioned to have patience and sit with anything anymore. And this is so much of our problem that causes our suffering. This is the Buddhist teachings on craving and desire and our inability to sit with discomfort, referred to as aversion. That Buddhist teachings very clearly talk about we're constantly seeking, craving, and desiring pleasure, things that we want, things that feel good to us, things that make us happy and pleasant. And we are constantly running away from things that cause us discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. This is dukkha. So we have an aversion and we run. But can we just sit and be present with what's going on? That's life. Because the more we can learn to sit with discomfort, then what we're sitting with that we label and call discomfort is no longer discomfort. It's just life. I mean, the very first thing is most of you, if not all of you know, the Buddha said is life is filled with suffering, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. We already know that from the very first thing he taught. And for some reason, we're always trying to run away from it. The practice isn't to run from suffering. It's not to run from discomfort. It's not to run from angst and dissatisfaction. It's to understand the cause of it, so we can stop it from arising in our lives. That's it. Always understand the cause of why you are suffering. And the Buddha gave us hints, very direct responses to the fact that it's tied to greed, anger, and ignorance. Those three. So any moment the rest of today that you find yourself with dukkha, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, ask yourself, is this greed? Is this anger? Or is this ignorance? And begin to explore that. Because that's helping you understand the nature of your mind, which is the entire body of this practice. Understanding the nature of your mind and what it does. So, with that, I'll pause. And for me, really just prefer to respond to questions. To those joining virtually, good morning. Sorry for not saying anything earlier. Glad you're here. Feel free as you are to chime in. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere, so feel free to say hello. And we'll spend the rest of our brief time this morning with questions. So meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with or want to share, and we'll go from there. Yeah.
You mentioned greed, anger, and ignorance are the three things that give rise to or suffering that may be happening. So where might, and in any of the, what Buddha said and in any of the teachings, where might shame lie in that? And that comes with, it's a big thing that, comes with a lot of trauma and stuff like that. And again, what's said about that, how to deal with that, where does that lie in the greed, anger, and ignorance?
Yeah. So the question for those who didn't hear, to those joining virtually, is where does shame fall into what's referred to as the three poisons, greed, anger, ignorance? Ignorance also often referred to as delusion. So, you'll see some different translations of the word. Greed, craving, desire, anger, ignorance, delusion. And your question is around shame. And you mentioned trauma and things like that. Shame let me ask you this. Just to clarify for my response, in that question, are you referring potentially to shame that you have towards yourself?
Yep.
Okay. That is anger, and that is ignorance. And it's greed. It's all three. It's greed because you crave and desire to not have shame, and therefore emotionally, mentally, you suffer because you don't want to have shame. So you're craving and desiring to not have shame, potentially. It's anger because a lot of the shame that one has towards themselves is tied up in the anger about what happened, what they did or what somebody else did or what they didn't do or should have done, right? There's a lot of anger tied up in shame towards self and others. And ignorance and delusion is ignoring the reality that whatever happened, happened. And the ignorance is often thinking that there's some way to solve it, or change it, or fix it, or correct it, or go back and make what happened not happen. It's all of them. Now, in all likelihood, you could have replaced the word shame with anything else, and my response would have been exactly the same. It's just 3 words, but these 3 words, greed, anger, and ignorance, are pretty broad. The challenge is we don't often see certain things, say shame as an example, as fitting into that. Because even in your reference of trauma and things like that, what we often do is we'll take an experience that happened, something we went through, and we very often remove ourselves from any role, and we make it about somebody else that did something to us. And then very often we'll say, well, I don't have any greed, I don't have any anger, I don't have any ignorance, they did this to me, and I was perfectly fine. That makes sense? But what we're living with now is the shame from what happened in the past, right? I mean, for me as a practitioner, for early on, a lot of shame viewed towards myself of things that I had did and things I had done. Not necessarily in my experience, anything that happened to me, more about things that I did towards others. Tons of shame, filled with greed, anger, and ignorance, because that was what caused all the things I did. Greed, anger, and ignorance. And then that's where the practice of self-compassion, loving kindness comes in, that says we have to send metta, have to send love and kindness towards ourselves, to forgive ourselves for the things we've done. And if the roles are reversed, to work on forgiving others for the things they have done. And understand that they too are suffering from greed, anger, and ignorance, which is why they did what they did to begin with. None of this stuff makes it easy. None of this stuff is like, oh, okay, well, that's why that happened. Cool, great. I'm good. Trauma solved. No, this isn't that. This doesn't solve anything. It helps you understand it and see the impermanence and emptiness of it all. That it's just human beings acting out of greed, anger, and ignorance. That's what we do. I always say you have to really kind of be ready to explore Buddhist teachings, because in essence, if you're interested in Buddhism, the very first step is to recognize that you're suffering because of your own greed, anger, and ignorance. That's a really hard thing to accept, that we're all walking around with our own levels of greed, anger, and ignorance. And if we're willing to observe that and be honest about it, then you can begin to explore the practice. But if we're in denial, and this has nothing to do with you, I'm just rambling. If we're in denial about that, and we think we don't have the greed, we don't have the anger, and we don't have the ignorance, then, you can't work from that place. So, hope that helps. Yeah.
Question. So once we start recognizing this? Is it at that moment that we start cultivating wisdom?
So the question is, once we start recognizing it, is it at that moment we start to cultivate wisdom? Wouldn't that be great? If you just woke up one day and you're like, yep, I'm greedy, angry, and ignorant. Come on, wisdom. I mean, yes and no, right? It's like a chant. It sounded like a wooden fish, actually. You all know that this Dharma instrument is called a wooden fish. So you see it a lot, like the Taiwanese temple I came from, the Chinese tradition, Japanese tradition, Vietnamese tradition. When they do chanting, right? The nuns and monks, they chant along. They're probably going to tell me to keep it down. The wisdom. So the reason I said yes and no is that I think, in my experience, there's a little bit of wisdom required to wake up one day and say, I'm greedy, angry, and ignorant. That requires some wisdom, right? I mean, when the Buddha awakened, and the story is that Brahma came down, the Buddha said, the 5 disciples, he taught them the 4 noble truths, right? Right before that, when he figured everything out about how to end suffering, he said, nobody's going to understand this stuff. I can't teach this. Nobody's going to get it. And the Hindu god Brahma apparently said to him, there are people with little dust in their eyes. Go teach. So to me, the metaphor of little dust in your eyes is like if your eyes are filled with dust, you can't see much. And so less dust means more vision, more clarity, more wisdom. So the recognition of greed, anger, and ignorance takes some wisdom. And that's the beginning. Right? And I know you were referencing this, although it would be great. We can't just say, I'm greedy, angry, and ignorant, and stop there. Then the practice of overcoming greed, as you all know, is generosity. The practice of overcoming anger is compassion. And then ignorance is the wisdom. So the continuation and cultivation of wisdom is to constantly see, where can we give the Dharma, the practice? Where can we share this in our lives, right? How do we give people our time, our attention, our hearts, our smiles, a hug, whatever it is? How do we take care of ourselves and others? How do we be generous towards self and others, right? That's wisdom. How do we have compassion towards all sentient beings, self and others? That's wisdom. And then the overcoming of ignorance is wisdom itself, right? So yeah, it's a start for sure. And a good start. And then it's like Groundhog Day every single day. This practice, every single day is Groundhog Day. You wake up every single day and you just do the same practice every single day. It never changes. And because most of us are filled with so much greed, anger, and ignorance, it also never gets boring or ends. Like, oh yeah, that was stupid. Don't do that. Don't say that. Don't think that. Yeah. It's a really fun practice. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So while we were meditating and all the noises were going on, I felt a little irritated at first, and then we went right to, we're doing wonderful things for the temple. We're making it better and safer and all of that. So in the reframing it, I could have, I thought that was the compassion that was maybe counteracting with the anger.
Yes.
So would the goal, if there's a goal, be not to do that, to just be okay with the noise? I'm not there yet.
Yeah, no, beautiful, great. So again, to rephrase for those who didn't hear it, you said that as you started and you heard the noise, you heard noise? Really? I didn't hear anything. You said as you first heard it, you felt kind of some irritation, and then you quickly kind of reframed it to, well, it's, you know, it's beautiful work for the temple, it's making the temple better, so it made you feel better about it. And your question is around, is the goal, which you saw me shaking my head and you already know there is no goal, but the practice, you said is the goal to ultimately not do that? Yes. So let's look at this in, you know, kind of like baby steps, stages. When things happen in your life, and this is a metaphor, that you don't like, that irritate you, the person driving cut you off, you know, whatever it is, to reframe it in a positive light on a practical level is very helpful. It allows you to not be so irritated, right? One of the most common references I hear a lot is the driving, where people say, hey, I was on the freeway, somebody cut me off, and I just tell myself, maybe they're headed to the hospital, maybe they're having a baby, maybe somebody's dying. You know, you create a story, so you're not pissed off. Very practical. But ultimately, yes. So, practice of equanimity is to just observe what's happening. No story. Because ultimately, the practice is, why even be irritated? Why would it irritate you? It would irritate you because you have an expectation of how things should be. That's how we live our lives. We live our lives every single day, whether we know it or not, with an expectation of how things should be. We order food, we make food, we go to dinner, whatever it is. We have an expectation of how we want that food prepared and served. Your entire life is like ordering a meal. And you have an idea of how it should be. And when it's not how it should be, it bothers you. Yeah. Does that help?
Sometimes the drilling, did anybody here that done tubing?
Yeah. Wasn't that cool?
So I look at it this way, when I heard that drilling, maybe called they're waiting for the drilling. I was also listening to the ducks.
Yeah. It's funny you said that because there's a beautiful talk, very few talks of Shunryu Suzuki. Very few talks of Shunryu Suzuki, who built San Francisco Zen Center, Suzuki Roshi, actual video talks of him filmed. And this one is, he's talking about the difference between noise and sound. And he's referencing birds chirping versus other noise. So there's sounds, even just the word sound to us sounds more pleasant for most people, I would imagine. A sound, birds chirping, ocean waves, waterfalls, people talking, whatever the sound is. Noise is like, we don't want noise. We want sounds. And we want pretty sounds. So our mind is very challenged when it hears these things. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Other thoughts? Yes. Yeah.
About 9-week programming is really awesome. It's some other issues. I found this, you can kind of do this to expect it, so I was laughing about it. But similar to reframing for me, was like my angst was like I'm thinking I'm at the dentist, but then I realized there's no pain, there's no pain, and I do what I do in the dentist, just breathe, you know.
Yeah.
And breathe with it, just like
Yeah. Oh, the drilling, you're referencing the drilling of the dentist being the same as the drilling
I was
here.
wondering why it was annoying, or saying because I was thinking about the drill,
Yeah,
and that's not exactly the drill. So you brought in the fact that I'm
yeah. So the moral of you sharing is this is way better than the dentist.
That was the best meditation I've had.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing.
Yes. Because
What else?
That is the thing, right? To be able to be still.
Absolutely. Yeah, just this is what's going on. All the frustration, irritation, annoyance, that's coming not from the drilling. It's coming from your reaction to the drilling. And everything in life is that way. Yeah, Chuck.
I am impressed by the variety of tools that
Yeah, it's a 97-year-old building, man. They built these things proper back then.
seem to have a dozen different noises.
Yeah, yeah. They do good work. Not easy drilling through cinder block, you know? Yeah. Or 8x8 redwood beams.
Well, that's-
Yeah, Justin.
I was just thinking, rather than kind of help elucidate this, like if I could have been in an A/B test, and you had either said, this is part of Dharma Bum's, it's helping the temple, or those neighbors next door,
Yeah,
or not said anything at all, like my reaction to the drilling the entire time would have probably been very different in each scenario.
yeah,
And I guess the goal is not the goal, but releasing attachment, it shouldn't be, right? It should
sure, correct. Correct. And because we set those constructs, right? Like, because what that is all tied to is you, right? Meaning you, Justin, have a certain view of A, B, or C. So if it's helping the temple, then you're like, okay, I'm all for that. If it's the neighbors, you're like, well, I don't know them. They need to be quiet. So we create and craft a story around the scenario. And like I said, I promise you, for as annoying as this might have been this morning, this is the absolute best teaching you can get. Because what this has done for potentially many of you has absolutely shattered your pleasant, beautiful, enjoyable morning here. That's the greatest thing you can have happen. Because what you've understood is that even in what you refer to as your safe, quiet, peaceful place, your mind can be destroyed. Potentially. And if it can be shattered here, in the space that you come to week in and week out, just by a little bit or a lot of noise, it can be shattered anywhere. Which reminds us, we got a lot of work to do. As do they, and the church bells are ringing, so I'm going to stop. Unless anybody has anything else they want to share before we close. And they return to their silence. So we'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Lama Zopa Rinpoche during his rebirth. May all be at peace. May we be at peace. So a few quick announcements before you head out. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple about 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not nuns, we're not monks, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're just practitioners. We're doing our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Every night we have different practices going on, different people from different Buddhist traditions. Quite a large recovery sangha that meets a few times a week. So anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be, that's always here. A couple things out of the ordinary. This coming Tuesday night, it's all up on the website and social media and everything. But Ben Connolly is a beautiful Zen teacher, practitioner, has done a handful of books for wisdom traditions. or Wisdom Publications. He'll be here Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. A lot of you typically come Tuesdays anyways, but he's going to come. We had him here a few years ago. He's kind of on his little book tour again. So he's going to come through with his new book. He'll be here Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Also, just grateful you're here. I really want to welcome Lisa, who came all the way from Austin to sit with this. We didn't tell you about this, so I'm sorry. But the rest of them I don't care about. But for a visitor, I'm sorry.
I appreciate the challenge.
Yes, so thank you all for being here. For those who do want to stick around and garden, you're welcome to. We can always use some help picking up in the garden and things like that. They're all on that side of the building, so stay away from over there. So thanks all for being here. Appreciate it.